Welcome to Soulful. Whether you're navigating challenges or celebrating victories,
We're here to remind you that every step on your path is meaningful. I'm Tiff,
and I'm Jess.
so let's clear our mind as we fill our soul. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. You know the drill. Here with Jess. I'm Tiff. We're just ready to get into conversation with you all. We haven't recorded for a little while, so we were just spending lots of time catching up, and my brain is a little bit all over the place here because it was like just nice to touch base. We couldn't believe it's been almost 6 weeks since we've last recorded. So yeah, it's been a good time. It's been a good break. It hasn't been a good time. I've missed you actually. It's been a good break. Um, anyway, we've done a lot of checking up with each other already, so we thought we might open things differently today than we normally do. But just a quick check-in, Jess. Just how are things floating in the last 6 weeks, and just where you're at.
Yeah, well, ditto. Also, missed you as well. Yeah, I feel like there was a bit of time where we were recording very frequently, and so yeah, to have 6 weeks kind of like fly by like that's kind of like crazy. So, but it's nice to yeah, it was nice to catch up and get back to recording. Yeah, things have been good, busy as yeah, usual over here, but there one thing that I will share is that my dog Nova is currently experiencing some kind of, I'm not sure. She just has a little bit of a cough. So I know that you all know this, but I'm just going to let people listening know that, yeah, if you hear a dog hacking up along in the background and maybe I have to pause and tend to that, I've been frequently just like giving her back blows. I've learned that in like first aid. So I don't know if it works for what she's going through. But anyways, just to let you all know that if I pop off or we have to pause it or something like that, then I'm just tending to my needy dog who has something
Hmm.
going on. So but yeah, so that's that.
Yes.
How have your last 6 weeks been?
Yes. Thank you, Jess. You're such a devoted dog mommy. That's what I heard. I need to take care of my baby, okay, if she's sick.
Devoted, crazy, I don't know. It's a fine line.
I mean, can you have one without the other? I don't know. No, totally fine. Thanks for letting us know. Yeah, she's a sweet, sweet baby. I actually love when she pops back in, so.
Yeah.
As for me, yeah, just lots of transition in the air right now, over the past little bit. Like there's been lots of like big ticket items that I've been working through, and I'm not even going to get into them, but just big ticket things. And so feeling really satisfied in getting those done. I do have that like dopamine rush when I check things off the to-do, and when it's been something that's been lingering for a long time, it's like,
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. Yep.
So I still have a couple more big things on those things. It's not like things I've been avoiding. They just all kind of happen to culminate at the same time. And oh my.
Yep.
Anyway. So yeah. But yeah, so that's me. And something that I was thinking about, and it's actually a question I brought to my client group this past week, is that we do, I know Jess, you and I feel like I can speak for us both in this. I don't often want to speak for somebody else, but we do a lot of inner work. We do a lot of inner reflection and a lot of like
Hmm.
thinking about things with curiosity or like, just being in contemplation or reflection. And and I said to my clients, I was like, we talk a lot about the work, like we talk a lot about like where we're going, but I've like, what if we were to slow down for a second and talk about something new we've learned or like a new awareness we've had? And I gave lots of space for them to think because I just kind of sprung it on them. And so, yeah, I thought that might be a fun question here. And something that I'm asking all of you listening as well is like, what is something new? Have you reflected on something new you've become aware of, or something new you're moving with, or a new pattern, or something your last, like, it doesn't have to be a week, it could be months, it could be just something that stands out. And if you want to share it with us, bonus, we'd love that. But so, yeah, I'm going to throw that question out to you, Jess, is what is a new awareness or insight that you've had in the last little while that, stands out to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First, I was like, when you were like in this place of like contemplation or like whatever, we do a lot of like inner stuff and have lots of conversations about it. I was brought back to like a recent training I was just facilitating a couple of weeks ago. Like we do this activity and like basically the answers are yes, no, or I'm not sure. And so they're like a poster in the room. And anyways, so we had shared this statement and someone had seen I'm not sure up on the wall. And then that person was like, I feel like I like constantly live here. And I said, yes, like this permanent stage of contemplation, I also can relate to that. So, yeah. But I think for me, like, okay, new something I've learned, new awareness, you know, yeah, like in thinking about in thinking about it, like sometimes I think that like the new awareness sometimes like lives within us anyways, like,
Yeah.
but it comes to like light in different times, right? We kind of pick stuff out. So like I think for me, because of a lot of like transition, moving pieces, kind of like in my personal and professional life in the last, 6 weeks, and physically, emotionally, like spiritually, like all of these like places, I think one of the things that comes to mind that I took some time to reflect on and I think was new, or maybe I didn't pay like as much attention to before is like, you know, my identity is not tied to like one specific thing, right?
Mm.
So like I'm not my job title, like I'm not the way I show up in my relationships, like I'm not my belief about politics, like neither of those things, I guess, independently is who I am, right? Like all of those things, I think, like are pieces of me that make a whole me, I guess, if that makes sense. But like, yeah, like just that realization of sometimes there'll be things that come up that are more relevant, right? In terms of like what we're moving through and shifting through. And we get like, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say like, I get really stuck in it, right?
Mm.
Like, I get really stuck in um, like a job change, or I get really stuck in um, like there's what I'm consuming. So of like the political climate right now, right?
Yes.
So I get all of like, and I have like my own perspectives and my own beliefs and my own things around those, but like there are so many other things that I also am that kind of like feeds into, my identity, or kind of like as I'm trying to navigate that. So I don't know. I think like that for me, I think that would be like the first kind of thing that really comes to mind. Yeah.
Mm.
What about
Deep,
you?
deep thoughts, actually.
Mm,
And I love before what you even shared about the identity piece, which was deep in itself, is like the awareness is already in us, you said. And I'm like, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like not awakened yet or whatever. Like it's like not actualized. I don't know what the word is, but yeah,
yeah.
that just like landed because it's like, yeah, when I uncover these things, it's like a deeper clarity within myself, but it was already within me. I just didn't see it in that way, or now I'm seeing it in a new light. And what it made me think of is like how healing is so nonlinear because we do revisit. We even come back with
Yeah.
new and we get new awareness and shifts with it. It's like, oh, interesting,
Yeah.
like, and we can
Yeah.
hold it differently. But yeah, what you're saying about how you get stuck in things. And I think I've been having this conversation a lot around the political piece in specific because it's so prevalent in the US and in our own country right now.
Mhm.
And obviously, we're recording this before the federal election and all that. And we're not here to have a political talk, but just
Right.
how in our face it is, And so, how easy that is to like take on if we're, or to be stuck. Anyway, that just jumped out at me.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Um, and for me, I've been on a journey. Okay. So this past year, I've been working a lot with more somatics in my healing because my God, do I love to intellectualize the crap out of everything. I
Mhm.
love
Mhm.
I love to intellectualize feelings. I love to intellectualize my experiences and it's like, but I think a big journey for me has been learning to be more in the body and hear what the body says versus what my mind says. And I've had a lot of
Mm.
experiences with that in recent mostly this whole new year. It's been really strong for me since about January, but just how it feels so much different and something that has really, this isn't even what I thought I would say, so I'm going on a whole different, I'm winging it. But what I wrote this to my clients once and I was like, it's just landing so much differently. How many stories and how fast we write them and how much suffering we create for ourselves when the body's not even saying it.
Mm,
It's like, I feel tense. Can we go relax? It's not always that simple, but and instead I'm like, oh my God, he said this and she said that, and then this happened, and then
yeah.
and I'm spinning out, creating more tension in my body as opposed to my body just saying, hey, can we go take a chill pill?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's just been very interesting to intentionally be in my body more and in my mind less, which is like newish for me. I've done somatic experiencing in the past, but I couldn't tap into it to this level. Again, we come back to things.
Yeah.
so so yeah, and so something that I've been really playing with recently is really around, and I've shared this before, but the belief of not enough, but also the other belief of too much, and how I really feel that they're the same. It's like it's just opposite ends of the same thing. It's like, but what's in the balance of it? And I'm not feeling the need to like drill in and like really figure it out, just being really curious and just holding it
Hmm.
there. But what my body tells me is it craves more spaciousness. And so I'm just sitting with that and I'm like, what does that mean for me? What does more spaciousness in my body feel like? Instead of, again, all of these stories and narratives and where it all came from and this trauma happened and this happened. And,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense, but just how fast my mind can spiral when my body's like a calm, quiet truth is kind of what feels different.
Yeah.
So,
It's like kind of like a disconnection sometimes, right? And
yeah.
like I think we're not always like yeah, I think we're not always like told or even like reminded to like listen to our bodies, right? Because we're so like like in our mind, like I think there's a lot of pressure around like maybe not pressure, but like there's a lot of conversations about like yeah, our cognitive like abilities or like our intellectual like thoughts or our knowledge or like all of those things and like kind of less yeah, less on like our body's experience or like our body's uh perspective within an experience, I guess, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. I haven't really done much work around somatic, like, yeah, so it's just interesting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. At first, it felt really like kind of woo woo, I'm not going to lie. It's like, what do
Yeah.
you mean? The questioning is different. The playfulness of it is different. Because yeah, therapy was like, let's understand why, let's get to the root, let's get the
Yeah.
how. And this is very different. It's like, but it's allowing me to be something that I've realized is just a lot more regulated and present and in the moment. And yeah, so am I doing it perfectly? Heck no. but
Well,
but that's life.
yeah.
My deep desire to strive for it, but it's not real. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, like the woo woo, like I often feel like, along with my constant state of contemplation, I feel like I live in a woo woo place. Like, also like some of the time. And I like to be very like upfront about that. It's like this is gonna sound really woo-woo right now, like the kumbaya, like save the whales kind of thing. So yeah, the balance, yeah, it's hard sometimes, right? To like,
Yeah.
but anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
that's not to say the mind stuff and the cognitive stuff is wrong or doesn't have
Hmm.
function. It's great to have insight and to understand our patterns and
Yeah.
and also sometimes I feel like sometimes that also just adds to my suffering. I was watching a this is just a little side note, but I was watching a renowned trauma therapist. I feel like it was Dr. Peter Levine, but anyway, he was talking about how yeah, it might not have been Peter Levine now. Anyway, it was one of them, one of the renowned trauma people, and he's
Yeah.
like, "We don't even need to retell the traumatic event. We just need to process what's in the body." And I was like, "Huh." Here I was thinking I needed to know all the facts and the details so that I could let it go. And it's like, that's interesting. That's an
Yeah.
interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean everything is like we always talk about like a holistic approach, right? Or a wholist being a whole human and like yeah,
yeah,
physical like that physical component is probably more than like oh, we should take a walk. Like it's more than that, right? So I think there's a
yeah.
reason why it's like yeah, why it is connected into all of the other parts as well.
Yeah, yeah, just integration or like integrate is more what I'm here, like what I feel is true. It's like, yeah, that's great to have our head stuff and also let's integrate it to our body stuff, like
Yeah.
yeah, that you said disconnection. I feel like that's a good word, like reconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Hmm. Anyway,
Yeah, food for thought.
there you
So,
go.
moving on. Today's topic is nothing to do with any of these things. Squirrel. All right. Today we're going to get into a topic that is like near and dear to my heart. And that is around judgment. And why is that near and dear to my heart? Because sweet Lord, do I have an inner critic in me? And I mean, I know we
Mm.
all do, but
Did you name?
my inner critic? No, actually, I haven't named my inner critic. That's a good point. I've named other voices in my head, but
Just not
no.
that one
But you
yet.
know what just came up with Sally, so maybe we'll roll with that. Maybe we'll roll with Sally. Sally in
Love
there,
it.
sour Sally. Yeah, she means real well, okay? She does, but she's got a lot to say sometimes, and I know when she's louder um and just tuning into her, but we'll get into that. So I wanted to like kick us off by like going right to the roots. Like, what is it to judge? Like, what is judgment, you know? And I was like, I sat and I thought about that for a little while, and I know what it looks like in myself or when I'm doing it to
Mhm.
another. I've done some internal family systems work. I know my protectors are at play and things like that. But I was like, what does it mean to judge? So I looked it up, and it was to form an opinion or an evaluation about yourself or somebody else based
Mhm.
on their actions or your own actions or character. So, and it usually comes from your own beliefs, values, past experiences, or standards, which you may have picked up from somewhere. But something that was really interesting to me before we kind of get into the why and how of judgment is there it ChatGPT helped me with this, so I'm going to give the credit over there. But it laid something out that just stuck with me, and it said it was four things. So judgment, to judge factually, means that we observe a behavior or a choice or an appearance or something. We observe something. Next, we interpret it, and this all happens pretty fast. We
Mhm.
interpret it,
Mhm.
which means we assign meaning to what it is that we've observed. So now that means something.
Mhm.
Then we evaluate it, which is a very clear, distinct part of judgment. It's good, bad, right, wrong. It falls in a moralizing category. And then we conclude and we decide something from that place. We decide that maybe we don't want to be around that person. We decide that we don't like them for XYZ. We decide whatever. And I thought it was actually like, you know, when I thought about it, whether I'm thinking about it within myself or I'm thinking about it when I'm doing it to somebody else, I was like, yeah, that's interesting, especially around the moralizing. We interpret it, we assign meaning to it based on old conditioning or belief systems or whatever. And then we're like, well, that sucks, or that was bad, or that was. And it's not to say we don't judge when things are good, but I think judgment often is associated with like when we are having a negative lens or view on somebody. So I thought that was interesting. And Jess, I saw you taking notes. So I want to like pause there and see if there was anything coming up just as I was kind of sharing that.
No, yeah, there was just something I don't know if you've heard of the ladder of inference.
Sounds familiar.
So I use it in one of the groups I do with the four agreements. We use it under the assumption, so I also call it like an assumption ladder. But
Okay.
it's very like familiar, like it's very, very similar to that. Like in saying that like we have like we observe something and then we take like we select data from that based on our experiences, based on, you know, our values, based on maybe what yeah, like I guess experience like what we've seen before when this happens, and then we like draw a conclusion on that and then we act on it, right? So it's like these like six steps of like and then like within the six steps it's like yeah, you create like new beliefs or
Yep.
you just like validate old beliefs, right? Like whichever way that it works. But yeah, it was just interesting as you were sharing because that is yeah, it's been a really like helpful tool because like we hear like 0 to 100, right? Like we yeah, oh, that person goes like 0 to 100 or whatever. And there's like 99 steps in between like 0 to 100 and like taking the time to like look at that. And I think the same goes for judgment, right? It's like
Yeah.
we jump to the judgment or jump to the conclusion of a judgment and we act on that without really like evaluating those like few things in between of like yeah, where's it coming, like all of the things, right? So anyway, it was just yeah, that was I made the note because it just sounded very familiar like
Mm.
to the ladder of inference it's called, yeah.
Ladder of inference. Yeah, I feel like I've
Mhm.
heard that before, but yeah, assumptions, I can see how they kind of function similarly because I think in
Mhm.
making an assumption, I haven't thought about this much, but like judgment is kind of involved, you know? Like there's a
Yeah.
bit of a dance there. So yeah, that makes sense. Ladder of inference. Look
Yeah.
it up if you want to.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, so yeah, like in hearing those things, like when I was like laid it out like that, I mean, like I said, I've done some work with judgment around, like I got really fascinated a long time ago about the why and the how, because I said like my inner critic used to be really loud. And I think that's driven for me from a lot of like the perfectionistic roots of like wanting things to be perfect. And so my inner
Mhm.
critic has always been like, okay, well, if it hounds me, I can do things really right. But what's underneath that for me is I want to feel safety, you know? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
judgment for me I think it's not just this, but I think a lot of it is to keep myself safe in a lot of ways. It's like if I can pull out the things, I'm going to speak for myself first, like towards myself, then I can protect myself from XYZ. I think it also comes from other places. We'll jump into that question, but something that well, first of all, I'm going to backtrack. I polled a bunch of people because I've been loving this of hearing from you guys. It's been great. I polled you guys on my on our socials, and I was like, "Do you judge yourself more or others, or is it about the same?"
Mhm.
And there was only a couple people who said they judge themselves more, but most everybody was like, "No, pretty equal." And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's because well in my experience is it often mirrors things back to us when we're judging
Yeah.
somebody else, it mirrors something back to us, or when we're judging something in ourselves, it's something that's not met or whatever, but we'll get into that. I wanted to like slow down and bring it back and just ask a really clear question to you, Jess, and I've got lots of thoughts on it too, but why do we judge ourselves and others? There's more than one reason, but
Yeah, like yeah, I actually really interesting to see like the results of a poll like of like yeah, we it's equal, right? Yeah, I think I'd probably be in that category as well. As much as like yeah, sometimes it's like oh, I want to say that like I'm non-judgmental. I also think that there are times, right, where yeah, like there are the thoughts like I don't think I often act on those judgmental thoughts. Like I think I've done work to be able to like not do that most of the time at least, but um yeah, there's still a little part, right? That's like a judgy part.
yeah,
I guess when I think about why though, like yeah, like the first thing that really comes to mind is when you mentioned like safety and like I would echo that. Like it's like I think it's really about survival in some ways, right? Like
yeah,
we have to analyze if a situation is dangerous or we have to make a judgment, right, a judgment
yeah,
call or like is this person a threat, we have to make a judgment call, right? So I think that's a big part of it is like our survival. And also I think by like having judgments or um I think it also gives us like a sense of control in some ways,
yeah.
where it's like we control like the narrative, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of, even if it's like a illusion, because like what do we really have control over? Not much. But I do think that like that's also a little bit about judgment and like maybe why we judge. Um, what else? I think like belonging to, like I mentioned identity at the beginning, right? And like
Yeah.
that's been something that's kind of been like really at the front and forth like of my mind lately. But I think that we sometimes we judge to find a belonging, like maybe in an attempt to like prove something or validate something or like to be like yeah, I think that way too, or I don't know. So I think there's like, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different layers to judgment, I think, right? Especially knowing that we can like judge ourselves and judge other people. And I think there could be some overlaps in that, but I also think that there can be very different too sometimes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a like good point too, because yeah, How I see it, I something that I like practice for myself is like when I notice myself, because I mean I don't always notice, right? I'm not always mindful and in the moment. But when I
Hmm.
notice myself being judgmental towards somebody else, I try to take note of that because I'm like, what does that mean about me? Because
Yeah.
like it's not really about them. And what does it mean about me? You touched on like a couple of really good points though, like survival. It's like wired into our survival. And I think that's why like we don't want to shame it. Like judgment is just part of being human, you know?
Hmm. Yep.
It just is. It's just like we can learn to work with it and shift it and stuff. But and the other part, you talked about the belonging piece, and then oh, the control. Yes, if I can control the narrative, like as an example, like if I walk into a room, this is like literally an example off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
I want to be perceived in a certain way, or I'm afraid, like feeling insecure about something. It's like if I name it out loud, like I judge myself out loud to the room of people, I get to control how that is being perceived because I'm like, I'm saying it. And I know control's more than that, but like I'm saying it. So you can't hold this against me. But again, I feel like safety's still underneath that because it's like I want to feel safe in the space.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the safety piece for me, I think, is often the biggest thing. It's like, and I think that ties into what you were saying about belonging too. I love that point because I in I need to feel safe in order to belong, really. Or like it's like such a nervous system thing. Like it's like a knee-jerk reaction for me. And I'm gonna try to give a tangible example here. And that is I was recently editing a past podcast episode and I was listening to myself. And it's my judgmental voice tends to be a bit loud. And so in preparing for this episode, I was like, what do you need inside me right now, voice? Like why is it your voice is so loud? I hear you, okay? You're right at the forefront. I hear you loud and clear, dissecting what I'm saying, picking apart the things and like giving me lots of criticism. And really, when I could sit with that, it's really like it was really trying to offer protection because it's like this doesn't feel safe to be seen in being imperfect, first of all, whatever perfect is. I know perfect's not real. I know this, but this has been
Yeah.
a lifelong thing for me. So, but it's like what it really was trying to communicate to me underneath all the criticism, but I had to sit in a space of curiosity. Like I had to calm my nervous system enough to sit in a space of curiosity. It was like, we want you to be seen as competent. So it had a really like positive intent,
Mm.
but it was like mean. It was like, why are you saying this? And what is it you're doing about that? And, I just like, yeah, if I didn't stop and slow that down, I didn't realize that being seen as competent is what was the driving force. And then I had to dig deeper with that too. But that caused me to feel unsafe. All that criticism in my head caused me to feel unsafe when really it was trying to help me to feel safe. And I
Yeah.
still don't think I'm being very clear here, but it was like such a moment for myself. Not the first time I've had that. Like I said, I feel like it's often trying to protect me from something. And you mentioned belonging and feeling a sense of control. In this case, like being seen, perceived in a certain way, which is still tied into control. But anyway, one other thing that jumps out at me now that I've like jumped all around here is um, sometimes when I hear myself judging something in my head, I'm like, where the heck did that come from? It's just old. It's like I
Yeah.
heard somebody else, it's not even mine a lot of the time. I heard somebody else judge somebody about this thing, and I heard it over and over. The current political landscape is a great example. We hear the judgment on the left and the right and all of this. And
Yeah.
it's like all of a sudden I've got all of these narratives about that I didn't even put in my head and I'm judging based on it. And I'm like, I didn't even have these thoughts as the initial thing. So just that conditioning and like hearing things and hearing judgments towards others, it's like, well, I don't want to be judged that way. So, but sometimes
Mhm.
things come out of my mouth and I'm like, that doesn't even, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially like you were like, so before you were talking about how like there are good things, right? Like it's a positive thing. Like it had a good intention, is what you said, right? It had a good
Yeah.
intent, even though it was making you, yeah, like feel like it was mean, right? And I do think that. judgment can be positive
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Like I do think that there is a space for that. Like I mean, like I think that was a really good example for that you shared about like trying to encourage safety or trying to establish like safety, right? Um, but I think when there's a disconnect sometimes in like what does that actually mean, or like there's a disconnect in like the meaning or like the why, it's like when it becomes like harmful or hurtful, right? Like
Mm,
whether it's to ourselves or for other people, right? Like
right.
I think both. Um, but yeah, like I do think that there is times when being um like when I think about being like when I think about judgment in a way that is like positive or like in a way that like I guess assists me in whatever I'm trying to do is like to think about like making better choices, like who it is that I trust, what is healthy, what's unhealthy, like
Mm,
what aligns with my values, like like I also think that it's judgment what often I feel motivates my integrity. Like,
mm-hmm.
it, I guess, like, it kind of like pays attention to like, how do I show up? Am I holding myself accountable to like the standards that like I want or like I choose to walk within, like, um, yeah. So when it's like good, then it's like more of like a check-in, not like a really mean kind of like, what you were sharing earlier.
Right. More shame driven, less curiosity driven, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, and I think it was an interesting point you made up too, like around like when we judge other people or like what, kind of being able to reflect on like where does that come from or like what's happening. But it's like, yeah, I think I judge other people sometimes because I see things that I haven't accepted in myself, right? Or that I haven't
100%.
worked through yet, like yeah, like I think judgment encourages projection, like in some ways, right?
Like, such an awesome point. Absolutely. Because sometimes, too, I want to give the example of like, because I was always told I talk too much, like to that point of like something I haven't accepted in myself, or it riles something in somebody else, and they judge me or
Mm,
vice versa. But like, just to give another example, because I feel like I think in examples more than I think in like definitions, but
mm,
or like analogies. But like,
yeah.
if I um somebody says, "Oh my God, you talk too much." Okay. And I've definitely heard that a lot in my life. So I internalize that. So that becomes then a judgment on myself. Oh my God, you talk too much. What do? My actions follow. Like, I like, don't say too much, Tiffany. Don't take up too much space in the room. Like, be whatever,
Mm,
and it's driven
mhm,
from this like belief I've created, right? But when I start to talk too much, if I'm reinforced that by someone else, like, you're talking too much again, it's like, oh no, I'm doing that thing again, instead of being able to step back and be a bit impartial and be like, am I talking too much, or were they told that they're not allowed to talk too much and that's rubbing something in them, or vice versa? I can put myself in either seat. So sometimes I think it really signals like an unmet need or something that was unattended in ourselves. It's like something that, yeah, yeah, anyway, just that point of like, maybe there's a wound or like something in there that still hurts, or and so if anyone draws attention to it, it's like, ouch, or they judge it, it's like, ouch.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, the talk too much, it doesn't bother me anymore. I do talk a lot, it just is now it's just an embodied, yeah, I talk a lot.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and what? I'll keep talking.
what else
No,
you got
I
to
think
say?
no, I think it's true though. Like even in thinking about like, I mean, I know I've talked about this lots, and I'm sorry if everyone's sick of hearing me say it over and over, but like this neutral language, right? Like not putting bad and good on things
Yes.
has been like, it's just been very like helpful and like um helps, I guess, like take away some of that judgment, right? For
Yeah.
for me when I'm for myself and for other people, right? Like yeah, there's like so many ways that I think judgment plays into our relationships, into the things we do, and into what I do for like work, how I show up in my personal relationships, like all of the things. I think judgment is yeah, it keeps coming up, and I think it's going to, right? It's one of those things that will, but yeah, to like I just love that thinking of like the neutrality of like
Mm.
it's not a bad or a good thing, right? I don't have to be like, oh my God, that's excellent, so great. Or I don't have to be like, wow, that really sucks, is the worst, like ever, you're the worst. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you've just set us up perfectly for the next like little segue. Judgment versus discernment, and discernment is that neutrality.
Mm,
So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, just to be in that neutral space,
mm,
that takes effort and practice again. Like that's a mindfulness thing, I think. To be able to pause and like, like choose how you want to come forward with something, which, depending on where we're at in our lives, is more readily available at certain times than others. If we're really stressed, it's probably less readily available. If we're in a better place mentally, physically, whatever, it probably is more available. So, um, but yeah, when I was thinking about this conversation, discernment gets thrown around a lot. And I wanted to think about that. And I was like, what? I remember actually having this conversation ages ago with somebody, and I was like, how do you just spend all day discerning? Like, my God, like it's exhausting. But like judgment versus discernment. And judgment, in my eyes, there's a lot of things that I could say about it, but judgment is charged. Judgment is emotionally fueled, I feel like.
mm, mm,
Judgment is fueled with like personal biases and also not always, but sometimes a need for moral superiority. And I fall guilty into that category sometime where it's like, again, it's that qualifying thing, right? Like, oh, well, that's bad and this is good. And I'm not ragging on the church, but I'm telling you, growing up in a church community, that some of that language is kind of interwoven. I'm not saying that's everybody's experience. It was mine,
mm,
where
yeah.
we were like, oh, well, they're going to hell if they do XYZ. And so like that was a lot of my early conditioning. So that moral
Mm,
superiority, I feel like tracks. Not that I'm like wanting to go about my life thinking I'm better or anything, but like I was taught like, well, this is good and this is bad.
yeah.
And so when people stray outside of that, I would have judgment. So anyway, that came up for me. Whereas like discernment for me is like, you said the word. It's like neutral. It's neutralized. It's not charged. It's like objective. It's not shame driven. It's like,
Mm,
it's like, huh, does that align? You said so much of that. I heard so much discernment as you were talking. Like, does it align with my values? Like, is this, but it's not needing to make it good or bad. It's just like, is this for me?
yeah.
So yeah, so I'd be curious, just in like thinking about that, what for you is the difference between judgment and discernment, or like how does that show up?
Yeah, so okay, so it's really funny actually that like this word discernment, okay? So like I remember this was like a long time ago now, but I remember being in this training and I don't know if you've ever done this activity where like you put your name on like the outside of an envelope and then you all sit in a circle basically and then like the envelope goes around and every person has to put like one thing like a description word or something about you in this envelope, right?
Yep.
So I remember like getting that envelope back at the end of this training or whatever. And I'm like, I would never look at it. I've done this activity so many times. If anyone's been in like lots of trainings or facilitate, like probably has a similar experience. But so I would always just put it in my bag and I would like look at it later. And I remember once there was like two words on the one time that I was like, I don't know what these words mean. Like discernment was one of them, or discerning was I think the word that was on there. And then the other one was jovial. Um so anyways, I didn't know, right? Like I was like, I don't know what these words mean. So I it's just funny because I don't know if I've heard that word since. And so when we were like kind of like chatting about this or whatever, it came up and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So it just kind of like sparked that thing. So, anyways, when I think, I guess, about like discernment, I do think of like calm. I think
Yeah.
like calm, like you said, neutral, like being rooted in clarity, alignment. Um, and I think it's more about observing what is, right? Or like what resonates, or maybe like what doesn't resonate, right? Like instead
Mm,
of putting a label on it, it's like, this is what resonates for me, this is what doesn't. Um, it feels for me, I think, also really spacious.
mm,
Like there's lots of room, like there's lots of room in discernment,
I
right?
love that.
But when I think of judgment, I think you Nova's gonna, she's like, this is too much for me. I don't want to listen to this conversation. I'm out of here. uh, she's choosing to excuse herself from spaces that she doesn't feel comfortable in. Uh, but I think when I think of judgment, you did say it like it does feel emotionally charged, right? Like it feels like reactive, I guess.
Yes.
And something that if I was to contrast it, I guess between like maybe it's rooted in like ego or
Yeah.
it's rooted in fear.
Yep.
And we use those labels of like good, bad, right, wrong, you know? Um, yeah, and I just think that that is rigid. I think it feels like really harsh. I
Hmm.
think it encourages like disconnection, it encourages separation. Um, yeah, so I think those are some of the things that I think about when I think about like the difference in discernment, which is really funny because like this was years and years, like a really long time ago. And I'm like, wow, I was like none of those things at that time. But it's just funny to see how we mask, right? Like
Yeah.
we mask what we want to be, like what we wish we were. Like, you know, we put on these and I think, yeah, I think I did a really good job, I guess, at like really like making people believe that I was like calm and rooted and grounded when I really didn't feel any of that stuff
Right.
internally, right? So but yeah, it was just funny like after all these years later I was like, oh yeah, there's that word again. I'm gonna think about that.
Yeah. All thank you. Like all of the words you're sharing are a lot of the ones like when you said rooted, I was like, that's exactly what I thought of. Like root you said rooted in alignment is what you said and like
Mm,
and values and it's grounded, it's calm. You use the word calm. And then you use a lot of the words that I would describe judgment. Yeah, it's fear-based because it wants
yeah,
to protect, it wants to keep
yeah,
safe, you know? And so yeah, ego driven. And you also said rigid and you use the word which is exactly what I would use to describe it is it creates separateness. You know,
yeah,
it divides. It like, you know, it's like, well, you're over here and I'm over here and then we maybe take action on that or not, right? Whereas like I feel like discernment is just like more rooted in compassion and not like signaling out someone's behavior or your own behavior. It's just like you use the word spacious, and I think that was such a beautiful word to describe it because it's like I feel like discernment is rooted in understanding. You know, it's like I want to understand it. I want to come to what is my truth around this or what does this mean for me like in relation with you? Like cuz say somebody's doing something that's outside your values. Like what like do I want to be in engagement with this person on a regular basis? But it's not like, "Oh, they're bad." It's just like,
yeah.
"What does this mean for me?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you also said, oh yeah, you said also rooted in clarity. And yeah, I feel like discernment offers a lot of clarity, whereas judgment is, yeah, it disconnects, it separates, it divides, it's fear driven. And again, a lot of the time with positive intent, if not always, you know.
Especially when we think about coming in from like a survival place, right? Like a
Yeah.
place of like wanting to feel safe and secure and to survive. Like, yeah, I think like the intention is good, but what is that song? Like, I don't know, maybe it's not a song, but they say something about like the road to like hell is paved with good intentions or something. I don't know. That
Yeah.
was like something I don't even know if it's a song, maybe not. Anyways, I think I'm thinking of Highway to Hell, actually. I was like,
Could, could be.
anyway.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard that before though. So
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter our intention because our intention doesn't equal the impact, right? And yeah.
that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I don't know if any of you listening have like thought about these things before, like the why you judge, or you know, what's the intent of the judgment, or what it looks like to be with discernment. But I thought it would be nice for us to kind of like round out our conversation around this, around like shifting, you know, because discernment offers a lot of gifts, and as Jess said, spaciousness and just grounded clarity. And, you know, so like, how can we shift towards that? But I wanted to share something with you guys. And I'm going to share it as a resource for this. Like, if you guys, if anybody wants it, it'll be there. I talked about it probably in a previous episode, I think, and I talked about how I do judgment free January. And that's not to say that I don't judge myself. It's just a time where I really slow down because I start off the new year of like just trying to be really in tune with myself. And I'm like, I get really curious about where some of these judgments are coming from. So it's like a monthly reflection. Like right now, I'm doing the month of restoration, and I'm putting a lot of mindful intention on being restorative. So it's just something I like to do in my journey. But the Yeah, I like to organize things and categorize. This month I'm working on this. It's not always so neat and orderly, but I like to put some intention when I feel like I need to.
Yeah.
So I created this thing for myself that I follow, and it's just basically guided journaling for myself of like, and it's exactly what I used when I went to this place of like, I do it more just naturally, intuitively in my mind now after years of doing it, but where I try to get to, the understanding part, the where I can offer myself compassion for like, okay, you're not trying to be a mean voice in my head, we're not trying to be whatever, like, and so I try to really connect with that part of myself without shaming Sally. Okay, Sally, yeah.
Mhm.
And just really try to understand what she's saying to me. Like, okay, what is it you need? Like,
Mhm.
because like I said, she's sometimes just ticking in the background on a low frequency, but sometimes when things are at higher stake for me, she gets loud.
Yeah. Mhm.
And yeah, so just really create space. So anyway, I'm going to share that with all of you, but it's just a like yeah, just a journaling practice with some like prompts that you can follow and make it your own. It doesn't have to be what Tiffany does. That doesn't work for anybody. You need to do with Jess needs to do what works for Jess. But
Yeah.
it's just like to encourage some thoughtfulness around it if that fits or resonates for you. So with that, Jess, I would like to ask the question in your mind, because like this is something I do to help myself shift from judgment into a space of more curiosity and a more compassionate stance for myself with intention.
Mhm.
What are some things that we can like practically tangibly do, or something that you do practically tangibly do in your own journey with judgment? Sounds like you stepped into discernment kind of organically, which is beautiful. you know but yeah, is there anything that kind of pops up for you?
Yeah, like I think, yeah, I think the language, and I also like, asking yourself the question of like where, like why is this like coming up? Like what is this trying to tell me? Like what is it like? So yeah, I think that's helpful. I just like really the only thing that comes to mind for me is the language shift. Like
Hmm.
and I know I've talked about that before, but with the four agreements, yeah, there's a reason why like being impeccable with your word is like the first one, right?
Yeah.
It's like how we speak is, I think, monumental to how we think and then also to how we behave as well as like a result of that. And so instead of like this is good, this is bad, this is stupid, or like whatever, like if yeah, I've just started to say like that doesn't actually like really align with what matters to me at this point in my life, right?
Hmm.
And knowing that of course that has changed and it can continue to change, so allowing ourselves the flexibility for that, of course, right? Because as we know, I really do I really do need that. But yeah, it just feels softer. Like it, yeah, it's been
Hmm.
really helpful as well when I think about really high stressful times or times when I need something to cope. And instead of like going back to things that I've tried before that really didn't turn out well for me, um, yeah, like just being able to approach it, I guess, with that way of like, you know what, this actually, like this judgment, this thought, this whatever doesn't actually really align with like, yeah, how I want to show up or, what I believe or what I value. And so, yeah, creating that narrative is like really harmful, right? It's like,
Hmm.
yeah. So I think like that's like the biggest like yeah, that's like the biggest thing I can think of when I think about what has worked for me. Because
Yeah.
the truth is that I can't stop it. Like I can't stop myself from having judgments towards me towards other people, right? But I also don't want to ignore it and I want to listen to it. Um be aware of it, but then also not give it power, I guess, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I like that point a lot around the language. And because again, if our language, I'm just thinking about what you're saying about the neutrality piece, like if the language is more neutralized, it's already going to be less emotionally charged. Thoughts create feelings,
Mhm.
feelings create actions. So, it's if we focus in on our language, it's like a great step to, yeah, I don't know. And you use the word, something that I think about a lot is like, it's soft, it's, you can be more soft. And that's like, I think a big part of it, of going back into the curiosity piece for myself. It's like, there's a question that comes up for me a lot. And I don't even think it's in my like guided journaling practice that I do for myself, but just one that I think about, especially guilty as charged when I'm judging other people more than myself. I might need to look at that. But when I'm judging somebody else, like, what is a softer story that I could say right now than what I'm currently saying? Or what is like a softer
Mm,
way I could land this? Because like sometimes I hear
mm,
myself, if I said something out loud and I'm like, one of those moments like, where did that come from? And also, is that true? Like, I'm just writing a story to this. So if I'm
mhm.
writing a story to it, what's a nicer ending? Or what's a
Yeah.
nicer outcome than the one I'm currently telling? Because the judgment fuels stuff. Like, if sometimes it fuels anger, it makes me feel rageful, it makes me feel
Mhm.
like, and how is that good for me?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I like that word soft. That just jumped out at me. And we talk about this, like, for me, like, we talk about this a lot in this space, and I think we will continue to talk about this here, but just really learning how to hold things. So it gives the why question, like, how do we hold this with more curiosity? I don't need to make it mean
Yeah.
anything.
Exactly. Like just taking it at like face value or whatever. I remember having a conversation with a friend once, and she was yeah, she just started dating someone new. And one of the words that she used to describe this person was like needy, right? And so I was like, oh, that like for me, what I heard was like that was like passing judgment, right? Of like what. And so I just I did stay curious with my friend. I was like, that's interesting that word needy, like. And I said, I mean, that person's not here, so obviously we can't ask that person of like where that comes from for them, but like where does that come from for you, right? Like the word needy. And so we had like this really like awesome conversation about, yeah, she was just afraid that she wasn't able to meet his needs. Like
Hmm.
that was what it was. She was like, actually it comes across as like, what if I don't have what I like what this person needs me to be, or I'm not the
Yeah.
person this the person needs from. And so yeah, like leaning into those like moments of yeah, just to be open and be curious about yeah, where it's coming up for us too, right? Like to
Yeah.
especially passing judgment on other people, because yeah, it's usually is charged by something that we
Yeah.
hang on to, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a, like, that's like that, like, yeah, it was something in her, right? So she said these words, and
mm,
like that's exactly when I was saying mirroring earlier, like it mirrors
mhm.
something back to us. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it might not be that we feel we're that thing or we're whatever, but it mirrors something back to like, hmm. So instead of being like, run with the story and all the emotions and all the whatever, like the pause, the curiosity that you offered her, how beautiful and what a gift to give her in that moment. But like, to be like, oh, actually, okay, so it's not about him, it's about what I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I might lack or something that I might not have. Or that was like a very way to ground this conversation. So thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
And so yeah, to everyone listening, I don't know if you've thought about these things. I don't know if you've stopped to consider like judgment and discernment and how to hold judgment differently, or like what it means for you. So I think, if you've taken anything from the shifting, great, but also just like, like, what does this bring up for you? Like, what does this
Mm-hmm.
conversation bring up for you? Like, um, yeah, and I know, like I said, I know for a long time I've been very shame driven. So I know that for me, um, this played a big role in my life. But like recognizing that, even in, like I was saying earlier, like the acknowledgement that I'm a human. I do judge. I go into survival mode just like everybody else, and to not then judge myself for that. Like it's just, I don't need to add on the layers of hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, you all know we love to hear from you. We love to hear what the conversation brings up for you, what it means for you. Um, so yeah, I don't know, Jess, if you have any last thoughts before we close it down for today, but I feel like this was like a really nice organic conversation between the two of us.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, and like there's no way to, yeah, there's no way to ignore judgment, right? And like I think you made a good point in like we don't have to add to it though. So even if we do feel a little judgy sometimes, I don't have to add that, add extra layers of narrative, I guess, like the
Yeah.
critical narrative on the reasons why, and to just meet that, yeah, with compassion, or to meet that with yeah, just something different, right? Trying to
Mm.
do like something different, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, yeah, I guess one of the things that I was thinking about, and I don't think I've shared this so far. No, I don't think so. But one of the questions that sometimes I do ask is like, what if, like, I'm just trying to think of an example. I don't really can't really think of one at the top of my head, but like I'll always meet it with like, what if actually nothing about me or about this person needs to be fixed, actually? Like if I
Yeah.
think like, oh, that person is, I don't know, that person must think that they're better than me or something like that, right? And I feel like, well, what if actually that's not true and nothing about that person needs to be fixed?
Right.
Like, so just like thinking of these little things that like work, like that I can have,
Mm.
and kind of like those moments where like, yeah, maybe I'm really in a stressful situation, or I don't really have the capacity to respond versus react. It's just like, yeah, these little tips, right? These little things I always find really helpful to have, and practice them, so they're kind of like um familiar, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you for saying that. I actually saw a post recently, I'll end on this, but I saw a post recently that was like talking about basically the evolution of how we change, how we show up, or how we shift. And it's
Mm,
so gentle, but that's exactly what it is. It's like first there's an awareness, then there's a pause,
mm,
then there is a choice, then there is
mm,
a daily practice, then it's
yeah.
a habit, then it's just the way that you are. So yeah, like what is a question you can add to your tool belt, of like that will help you in these moments of like, and like I said, there's lots of choices out there. You'll see some prompts on the guided journaling thing that I do, but yeah, what is something that you can add that might be easy to reach, and maybe not even at first, but like intentional to reach until it becomes easy to reach. So I love that you just shared that. Yeah. What if something does then what if they don't need to be fixed? What if I don't need to be fixed?
What if I don't need to be fixed?
Yeah, it took me a long time to learn that. Definitely thought I
Yeah,
needed fixing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would argue that, yeah,
Yep.
sometimes I still think that.
100% sneaks right in under the door.
Yeah.
Real stealth like. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I hope whatever we shared today is resonating with you in a way that is helpful and practical. And, we would love to hear from you. So drop in our DMs, please and thanks. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but this will wrap up here for today. So, as always, stay soulful, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Soulful. We hope you found something meaningful to carry with you on your journey. And if you enjoyed today's episode and want to show your support, we invite you to subscribe, share the podcast, and leave a review wherever you listen.
And if you're eager for more, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Soulful the Podcast for additional content and updates. Until next time, stay soulful.